Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad. And by the way, it happens on the streets of Chicago every day.
President Obama fighting back tears during an emotional announcement of his latest executive order on gun control yesterday. Our next guest says that most of the president's critics are actually surprised at how little this executive action actually does. Let's bring in Washington Examiner columnist Kristen Soltis Anderson. Kristen, thanks for joining us this morning. First of all, what did you make of the new gun control that he laid out? Is this a big change?
So I think the NRA spokesperson actually came out and said, this is it, really? The changes that he's proposing are in some ways very sort of small potatoes. I've seen sort of the buzz amongst other sort of conservative commentators that I talked to went from real big concern that the president was dramatically overstepping his bounds in terms of executive authority to saying, if you're going to go, cross the line in terms of violating your role as president, this is it. This is really all you're doing. And in fact, nothing that he's proposing would in any way have prevented the tragedies that the president is talking about and got emotional about. So I think that was sort of a shift in the discussion I saw amongst conservatives yesterday that went from deep concern about abuse of executive power to sort of surprise at the small nature of what he was proposing.
Kristen, do Republicans see the need for any change when it comes to our federal gun laws? I've been digging so deep into this, and it's so difficult to keep track of what's legal and what's not. When you look at the laws on a federal level, you look at the state level, the age requirements are different. I mean, it's really difficult to keep track.
Sure, and I think that the main thing that a lot of conservatives are focused on is mental health. When you look at a lot of these mass shootings that have happened recently, the common thread there is that the shooter was someone who there was a lot of concern about whether or not they should have access to a gun, and had only someone been able to get them treatment, had only someone been able to alert authorities, perhaps we could have done something about it. And so there's been a big push on the right to try to do stuff around mental health.
Right.
And to his credit, in the president's action, he does call for increased funding for sort of mental health treatment. But that seems to be the one place where there could be bipartisan agreement.
But there's so much rage about the violation of your Second Amendment rights. But what about people getting upset about privacy in this country? If you read that provision, the Republicans always throw it to mental health. Okay, the president says this, to use the Social Security Administration data to help identify people who should be prohibited from purchasing firearms on mental health grounds, assuming that if you're on some sort of disability, you shouldn't be able to own a weapon. Why are people upset about that? That's very shaky ground. Not only the president's on, but I would argue that the Republican candidates are on if they want more government in your health records.
Kristen, interesting point.
I think that she's absolutely right, that I think people don't want government getting more involved in their health records. We've seen with Obamacare that this has already been really disastrous for tons of Americans. But I think in terms of treatment, making sure that when we know that someone is a threat to others, and themselves, that we have the ability to do something about them. That right now there are so few sort of good legal protocols for dealing with that particular situation, that there's got to be a way to find common ground that doesn't invade people's privacy unnecessarily, but does make sure we are dealing with the mental health epidemic in America.
All right, Kristen Soltis Anderson, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.